Hi, my name is Dr. Felucia, and I'm a licensed psychologist. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 4 mistakes to avoid when you are leaving your spiritually abusive environment. Now, I've made other videos about leaving the spiritually abusive environment, and I've talked about this, and I'll repeat this again. That is your decision to make. I'm not here to tell you whether to leave or stay. However, if you do decide that you are going to leave, it's very important that you avoid 4 mistakes. The first mistake is announcing your leave. And by the way, a little hint, all of these mistakes begin with the letter A. So the first one is announcing your leave. I generally don't recommend this. And the reason why is that it's just going to add a lot of stress to what you're already trying to do. I think that leaving a spiritually abusive environment requires a lot of willpower, requires a lot of inner strength and resilience. And by you announcing it to everybody, you're just going to be bringing on more attacks, more questions, things like that. And you want to make sure that you're in the best emotional place possible as you are making this transition. So, generally, I don't recommend making a big announcement about it. I mean, if you feel like there are a few people that you can trust and you want to tell, go ahead and do so. But making a big announcement about it is something I generally don't recommend. And I've seen that when people do this, it tends to backfire. People in the spiritually abusive environment work on shame and guilt and manipulation. So if you announce that you're going to leave, one way that they can try to keep you in that environment is really bringing in the big guns of shame and guilt and really putting on the pressure hard for you to change your mind. So if you've resolved to leave, then leave and leave quietly. Okay. The second mistake I would avoid is getting into arguments with other people about your decision. Your decision is yours to make. And when you get in a position of arguing, that puts you on the defensive. It also can make you feel like you have to justify a personal decision to other people when that's not the case. Your decision to leave is your decision to leave. And so sometimes I'll see people and they'll tell me about how they get in arguments with people on social media, maybe after they've left or whatnot, or maybe people in similar situations who think, well, why did you leave? It's not that big a deal. And so I would encourage you not to argue with others about it. If you've made your decision to leave, leave. Other people are not going to agree with you. And that's something to expect. You're leaving an environment, again, where there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of control, there's a lot of fear and domination. And so when someone is breaking the rules of that type of environment, you're going to be met with a lot of resistance anyway. And I don't feel it's productive to get in arguments with other people about it. Okay. By the way, if you have not already done so, please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe. What this does is that it helps get this video out to similar others who could benefit from it. So if you haven't done so already and you would like to, please do me a favor and like the video, comment, share, and subscribe. So I've talked about 2 mistakes, right? The first one is announcing. The second one is getting in arguments. The third one is admitting things, right? And so you've probably heard that phrase before, don't admit anything or admit to nothing. And I kind of hold that stance when it comes to spiritual abuse and leaving the spiritually abusive environment. You're going to get accused of all sorts of things when this happens. And you might even, be, I would guess, maybe accused of something that's not wrong. So, for instance, let's say that you left the spiritually abusive environment and you didn't tell anybody, which is what I advised, or not announced. And then someone says, "Wow, you didn't even tell us that you were leaving. We could have had a goodbye party for you, whatever it is." Um, don't admit to anything. Don't be like, "Yeah, I did." Want to keep it a secret. You don't have to admit anything or justify your actions to anybody. And I know that seems kind of weird, but you have to remember that when you're dealing with people who are very manipulative and toxic, you cannot afford to fight fair. There are rules that you always have to keep into consideration and decide, is this a rule I'm going to keep or is this a rule I'm not going to keep? And for more about that, I have 2 videos that I think would be really helpful. The first one is called "You Can't Fight Fair Against Spiritual Abuse," and the other one is "The Game is Rigged." And why people typically don't win or think that they don't win the way they think they will when they speak up about spiritual abuse. I'm not saying don't speak up about it. There are nuances around this, but I am saying you have to go in this with a what's the word I'm looking for? A strategic mindset. You can't go into this being naive. And so if you're ever accused of anything, you don't have to admit anything to anybody. If you did, someone might say, oh, I know you've been planning your leave for months. And, I see how you've been quiet on social media and you haven't been coming here. You don't have to admit to anything. You can change the conversation or say, I'm not talking about that right now. And I want to leave or whatever it is you want to do, but you don't have to admit to anything. And I know that that can be really challenging for some people, especially the way you've been conditioned by the spiritually abusive environment, but you can always just not respond to a question or an accusation. Okay, so, and then the last one is accuse. Don't go into this or don't leave this environment accusing people of doing certain things unless you have concrete evidence and you are ready to, go to whatever authorities you need to go to court, all these other things. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't speak up and you shouldn't accuse people that are doing things that are wrong. Clearly, if your safety if you're not safe or someone else, is not safe or being harmed, then of course you need to take the proper precautions, right? And you should do what you need to do to keep yourself and other people safe. But that being said, sometimes people have made the mistake of accusing somebody of something like, oh, that person is such a narcissist, or that person, is whatever. They might try to diagnose them with a mental illness or say that they're stealing or whatever it is. And, you have to really have evidence before you just go out and accuse people of certain things. And what you do is when you do that, number one, it puts you on the defensive, and it actually, you can have some repercussions from something like that, especially in the legal sense. So you really want to be very careful about just accusing people. Now, there is probably going to be a time and a place where you may need to call somebody, call someone to the mat and say, hey, you did this, this, and that, but you need to make sure that you're in a good place before you do that. When you are leaving a spiritually abusive environment, you must prioritize your safety and you must prioritize getting out. And so if you're throwing all these other things in the mix, these four mistakes that I talk about, it makes it harder. And instead of you just making a clean exit or as clean of an exit as you can, you're going back and forth with people. So I'm going to go over those four again, and they all begin with the letter A. See if you can remember the first one. Do you remember what the first one is? Okay. So the first one is announce. Don't announce your leave, right? Leave quietly, tell as few people as you can, plan in advance. I'm not sure if you've ever heard this saying before, be as cunning as a serpent, but as wise as, or as harmless as a dove. So be as cunning or wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove, meaning that you're not harming anybody, but you also are making sure that you are not being harmed. It's actually, I think, somewhere in the New Testament of the Bible, but I don't remember the exact passage. But that's the kind of mindset you want to have. You don't want to harm anybody, but you are also making sure that you are not being harmed. So don't make an announcement. The second thing is, don't get into arguments, right? Don't argue. Don't feel like you have to justify what you did. The third thing is don't admit anything. You can be accused and probably will be accused of all these things, but you don't need to admit anything that you don't feel comfortable talking about. And I would say that if you're ever accused of something, don't even take the bait of getting into an argument. You can just leave. You can end the conversation, whatever you need to do. And then the last thing is don't accuse. You want to protect yourself. You want to get in a safe place. And then you can start figuring out, okay, this person did this, you have the evidence and so forth. But you don't want to just make everything just one big jumble because it's going to be a lot. You have to remember to protect your own mental health and your own safety. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, you'd like to book a consultation with me, you can go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, and click on the orange button to book a free consultation. But that button acts wonky sometimes. So I'd prefer if you just emailed me directly at Dr. Feluso, that's DrFoluso at skillsetcounseling.com. Email it directly and to set up a consultation. And then I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever made one of these mistakes? And if so, how did you deal with it? Or are there other mistakes that you would encourage other people to avoid while leaving? All right. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. And may you have a peaceful and wonderful day. Bye-bye.